Chosen one, this is why you felt everything so deeply. Chosen one, from a very early age, you felt the world differently. Sounds were louder, emotions were heavier, silence spoke, and energy never lied to you. While others moved through life untouched, you absorbed everything. You noticed pain before words were spoken. You felt shifts before actions were taken. And because of that, you often wondered why life seemed so overwhelming for you when it appeared so simple for others. They told you that you were too sensitive, too emotional, too intense. They said you took things too personally, that you needed to toughen up, that the world wouldn't slow down for how deeply you felt. But what they never understood is that your sensitivity was never a flaw. It was awareness, it was perception, it was your soul remembering something ancient that the world had forgotten. Chosen one, you weren't made to fit into a system built on numbness. You were designed to feel, to perceive, to see beyond appearances. And that is exactly why your journey has been so challenging. You were tested internally, wounded emotionally, and betrayed externally, not because you were weak, but because you carried something rare. You were placed in environments that felt heavy, because you had the capacity to survive them and eventually rise above them. So many times, you questioned yourself. You wondered if something was wrong with you. You tried to shrink your emotions, silence your intuition, and hide your depth just to be accepted. You learned to stay quiet to keep the peace. You learned to give more than you received. You learned to survive in places that were never meant to nourish you. And little by little, you started to believe the lie that your sensitivity was the problem. But chosen one, hear this clearly now. The chosen are not born hardened. They are born sensitive. Their strength does not come from emotional armor, but from emotional depth. You were sent into chaos, not to be destroyed by it, but to learn how to transform it. You were surrounded by pain so you could understand healing. You were exposed to darkness so you could recognize light. This message is not here to flatter you. It is here to remind you, to awaken something your soul already knows. Everything you've lived through has been preparing you for this moment of awareness. Your empathy, your intuition, your emotional intelligence, none of it was accidental. It was training. It was refinement. It was preparation for alignment. And now, chosen one, something has shifted. You're no longer here just to survive, to absorb, or to carry the weight of others. You're here to return to yourself, to understand who you are without guilt, without shame, without apology. This is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of clarity. You were never fragile. You were always strong. And now, you are ready to remember. Chapter 1. Your sensitivity was never a weakness. Chosen one, before you ever understood words like purpose, awakening, or destiny, you already felt different. As a child, you noticed what others ignored. You felt moods shift in a room. You sensed when someone was hurting, even when they smiled. You could feel tension, sadness, and unspoken truth without anyone explaining it to you. And because of that, life hit you harder, deeper, and earlier than it did most people. They called you too sensitive, too emotional, too soft for a harsh world. But chosen one, what they didn't realize is that sensitivity is not fragility. Sensitivity is perception. It's the ability to read between lines, to feel beneath words, to notice what hides in silence. While others were distracted, you were aware. While others slept emotionally, you were awake. From an early age, you learned how to adapt. You learned to quiet your feelings so you wouldn't be labeled difficult. You learned to shrink your reactions so you wouldn't be misunderstood. You learned to carry more than your share because you thought that was love. And the more you gave, the more the world took. Yet somehow, even when you were exhausted, you kept caring. That's not weakness. That's a soul with depth. Chosen one, the reason life tested you so intensely is because you could handle it. The chosen are not protected from pain. They are prepared through it. You were placed in environments that forced you to grow up fast, to read energy instead of relying on words, to become emotionally intelligent long before you were taught how to protect yourself. And while that hurt you, it also shaped you. Think about it. Even when you were broken, you still tried to understand others. Even when you were ignored, you still listened. Even when you were betrayed, you still searched for meaning instead of revenge. That's because your spirit was never designed for destruction. It was designed for transformation. But no one told you how to guard your heart. No one taught you that empathy without boundaries becomes self-destruction. So you absorbed emotions that weren't yours. You carried pain that wasn't meant for you. You tried to heal people who never wanted to change. And slowly, you began to feel lost, drained, and disconnected from yourself. Chosen one, this chapter is where the truth begins to rise. You were never broken. You were overloaded. You weren't weak. You were unprotected. And now, awareness is awakening inside you. You're starting to realize that what made you different is what makes you powerful. Your sensitivity is your radar. It's how you sense danger before it arrives. It's how you recognize truth without proof. It's how you connect deeply, love fully, and understand beyond logic. And when this gift is healed and guided, it becomes unstoppable. If you're feeling this message deep in your chest, it's not random. Something inside you is waking up. And this channel exists for moments exactly like this, to remind you who you are, to help you heal without losing yourself, and to walk this journey with clarity instead of confusion. Chosen one, this is only the beginning. Stay with this message. Stay with this channel. What's coming next will help you step into your strength without dimming your light. Chapter 2. You gave until you forgot yourself. Chosen one. This is where many like you began to disappear, not all at once, but quietly, piece by piece. You didn't lose yourself because you were careless. You lost yourself because you cared. You gave without counting. You listened without limits. You showed up even when you were empty. And for a long time, you believed that was love. From early on, you became the one people leaned on. The one who understood. The one who stayed calm in chaos. The one who carried emotional weight no one else wanted to touch. You learned how to be strong for everyone, even when no one was strong for you. And because you rarely complained, people assumed you were fine. But chosen one, being quiet in pain doesn't mean you weren't hurting. It means you were enduring. You absorbed emotions that weren't yours. You took responsibility for other people's healing. You felt guilty for setting limits. You believed that saying no meant rejection, that choosing yourself meant selfishness. So you kept giving, your time, your energy, your compassion, hoping that one day someone would finally see you the way you saw them. But instead of being met, you were drained. Instead of being protected, you were used. Instead of being poured into, you were expected to pour endlessly. And still, you stayed, because you didn't want to abandon anyone the way you had once felt abandoned. Chosen one, this is a truth many don't like to hear. Not everyone who receives your love knows how to respect it. Some people don't want healing. They want access. They don't want connection. They want comfort at your expense. And because of your empathy, you tolerated things that slowly eroded you. You called it patience. You called it loyalty. But deep down, your soul was exhausted. There were moments when you felt invisible. Moments when you wondered why love always felt heavy for you. Moments when you asked yourself why you were always the one holding everything together while quietly falling apart. And the most painful part wasn't the giving. It was realizing that very few people noticed when you stopped. This chapter is not here to blame you. It's here to awaken you. Because chosen one, your heart was never meant to be a sacrifice altar. Love was never meant to cost you your identity. Compassion was never meant to erase your needs. You didn't come into this world to save everyone while losing yourself in the process. And here's where the shift begins. At some point, maybe recently, maybe slowly, you started to feel something change. You began to feel tired in a different way, not just physically, but spiritually. The kind of tired that no rest fixes. The kind that whispers, something has to change. That wasn't weakness. That was wisdom awakening. You started to realize that abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable was not noble. It was harmful. You started questioning why your kindness always required endurance, why your love was unconditional. But theirs was selective, and for the first time, you didn't ignore those questions. Chosen one, this is the moment where healing starts to knock. Not loudly, not dramatically, but persistently. It asks you to look inward instead of outward, to notice your own pain instead of minimizing it, to understand that you deserve the same care you so freely give. If this chapter feels personal, it's because it is. And if you're still here listening, It's because something inside you is ready to stop surviving and start returning to yourself. Stay connected. Stay present. This journey is unfolding for a reason. In the next chapter, we'll show you exactly where your power begins to rise. Chapter 3, you were tested. Because you could carry it. Chosen one, there's a reason your life felt heavier than most, even when you were young. While others were protected, you were exposed. While others were guided, you were pushed into figuring things out alone. You faced situations that demanded maturity before you were ready, responsibility before you were prepared, and strength before you even knew you had it. This was not random, and it was not punishment. It was preparation. You were tested on the inside long before the world ever tested you on the outside. You learned to sit with emotions others ran from. You learned to endure silence, rejection, misunderstanding, and pressure without having the words to explain what you were feeling. And because you didn't break the way people expected you to, they assumed you were fine. But chosen one, strength doesn't mean absence of pain. It means learning how to carry it. You were placed in difficult environments because your soul could handle complexity. You were surrounded by emotional chaos because you carried the frequency of order. You were exposed to pain because somewhere deep inside, you held the ability to understand healing. The chosen are not sheltered. They're shaped, and shaping is never gentle. Think back to the moments that confused you the most, the betrayals that came from people you trusted, the rejection that didn't make sense, the feeling of being singled out, misunderstood, or pushed aside. Those moments cut deep, not because you were weak, but because you were sincere. Your heart was real in a world that often wasn't. And still you endured. You didn't become cruel. You didn't harden your heart completely. You didn't lose your capacity to feel. Even when you were disappointed, you searched for meaning instead of revenge. Even when you were hurt, you tried to understand instead of destroy. That alone speaks volumes about who you are. Chosen one. Many people crumble under pressure because pressure reveals what isn't rooted. But you, even while shaken, stayed standing. Not perfectly, not without scars, but you stayed. And every scar became a layer of wisdom. Every setback taught you discernment. Every loss sharpened your awareness. You were forced to grow inwardly before you could grow outwardly. You learned to read energy instead of relying on promises. You learned to trust your intuition when logic failed you. You learned that not everyone who smiles is safe, and not everyone who leaves is a loss. These lessons were painful, but they were necessary. This chapter exists to tell you something important. You were never being destroyed. You were being trained to see clearly, trained to stand alone if necessary, trained to develop inner authority instead of external dependence. And now, as you begin to reflect, things are starting to make sense. You're seeing patterns, you're recognizing cycles, you're understanding why certain people couldn't stay, why certain doors closed, why certain paths became unbearable. It was never to block you, it was to redirect you. If you're still listening, it's because your soul recognizes this truth. And if this message resonates, it's because something inside you is remembering. Stay connected to this channel, Chosen One. Each chapter is revealing another layer of who you are and why you are always stronger than you believed. Chapter 4. Healing began the moment you chose yourself. Chosen one. There came a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when everything began to change. It wasn't dramatic, no applause, no announcement, just a realization forming deep inside you. You could no longer abandon yourself. You had spent so long prioritizing everyone else's needs that you forgot what it felt like to listen to your own heart. And when you finally did, it spoke with clarity. For the first time, you questioned the beliefs that kept you stuck. You asked yourself why love always felt like exhaustion, why loyalty required suffering, why compassion demanded self-erasure. And as those questions surfaced, so did the truth. You had been confusing endurance with love. You had been mistaking silence for peace. You had been calling survival strength. Healing didn't arrive to make you harder. It arrived to make you honest. Honest about how tired you were. Honest about the pain you kept minimizing. Honest about the parts of you that felt unseen and unprotected. And instead of judging yourself for it, you began to meet yourself with compassion. the same compassion you had always given to others. Chosen one, this is where the shift became undeniable. You started setting boundaries, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You learned that saying no didn't make you cruel, it made you aligned. You realized that walking away wasn't failure, it was self-respect. And slowly, the guilt that once followed your choices began to lose its grip. You stopped explaining yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped chasing connections that required you to shrink. You stopped negotiating your worth just to feel chosen. And in doing so, something powerful awakened inside you. Not rage, not bitterness, strength. This strength didn't shout. It didn't demand attention. It stood firm. It protected. It observed before acting. It understood that love without limits is not love. It's self-destruction. And for the first time, you allowed yourself to be held by your own presence. Healing also asked you to grieve the version of you that tried so hard to be enough, to grieve the years you spent overgiving, overthinking, and overextending, to grieve relationships that only survived because you kept sacrificing yourself. And as painful as that grief was, it freed you. Because chosen one, healing is not pretending the past didn't hurt. It's honoring what you survived and refusing to repeat it. It's understanding that sensitivity does not mean submission. That compassion does not mean tolerance of harm. That love does not require self-betrayal. As you healed, your inner world grew quieter. Not empty, but peaceful. You began trusting your intuition without questioning it. You began honoring your energy without apologizing. You began choosing environments that nourished you instead of draining you. And with every conscious choice, your confidence deepened. This is where you discovered something important. Your power was never outside of you. It was just buried beneath exhaustion and obligation. And now that you're reclaiming it, your life is beginning to realign. If this chapter speaks to you, stay with it. Stay with this channel. Healing is unfolding layer by layer, and what you're becoming requires patience, presence, and truth. Chosen one, choosing yourself was not selfish, it was sacred. Chapter 5, a healed empath becomes structure. Chosen one, when your healing truly began to settle, something subtle but powerful changed in you. You didn't become louder, you didn't become harder, you didn't become distant out of spite. You became centered. And that shift altered everything around you. Before healing, you absorbed emotions. You carried tensions that weren't yours. You tried to stabilize situations by sacrificing yourself. But now, you no longer dissolve into the emotional chaos of others. You stand within yourself. And that inner stability is something many people are not prepared for. A healed empath doesn't react the way they used to. You no longer rush to fix, explain, or rescue. You pause, you observe, you feel, but you choose. And this is where your true strength reveals itself. Because structure doesn't control, structure holds. It creates order without force. Chosen one, people can sense this change in you, even if they can't name it. The ones who thrived on your emotional availability feel unsettled. The ones who relied on your guilt feel confused. The ones who benefited from your overgiving feel the shift immediately. Not because you became cold, but because you stopped leaking energy. You now see clearly who was walking with you out of love and who was walking with you out of convenience. And instead of confronting, you simply withdraw access. No drama, no explanations, no emotional battles, just clarity. That alone is power. A healed empath doesn't harden their heart, they fortify it. You still feel deeply, but now your feelings are anchored in awareness. You no longer get pulled into emotional blackmail. You don't respond to manipulation disguised as need. You recognize when empathy is being used against you, and you choose differently. This chapter marks the moment when your energy gains edges, not walls, but definition. You understand that being available to everyone makes you unavailable to yourself, so you choose presence over performance, alignment over approval, peace over proving. Chosen one, this is why your calm feels intimidating to some. They were used to your self-doubt. They were comfortable with your uncertainty. But now, your stillness speaks. Your grounded presence disrupts unstable dynamics. Without you saying a word, you no longer chase closure. You no longer demand understanding. You no longer explain your growth to those who benefited from your wounds. You simply live differently, and that difference is undeniable. Your empathy, once scattered, has become focused. Your intuition, once questioned, is now trusted. Your boundaries, once soft, are now clear. This doesn't make you unkind, it makes you whole. If this message resonates, it's because you're stepping into this phase now. Stay connected to this channel, Chosen One. This is where your healing turns into authority, and your presence becomes something no one can ignore. Chapter 6. Your peace became your power. Chosen One, there was a time when silence frightened you. Being alone felt like punishment. You stayed in draining situations not because they were right, but because you feared the emptiness that might come after leaving. You associated presence with worth and attention with love, so you endured discomfort just to avoid loneliness. But healing changed that. Little by little, solitude stopped feeling heavy. Silence no longer echoed with fear. Instead, it became a refuge, a place where your nervous system could finally rest, a space where your soul could breathe without having to perform, explain, or carry anyone else's weight. Chosen One, this is where peace became your teacher. You began to notice something important. Your body reacted before your mind did. When something disrupted your peace, your energy pulled back. When a space felt unsafe, your intuition spoke. And instead of ignoring it like before, you listened. You stopped questioning your inner signals. You stopped overriding yourself to keep others comfortable. Peace became your measure. If something cost your peace, it cost too much. You no longer chased chaos disguised as passion. You no longer confused intensity with connection. You recognized that calm is not boring. It's regulated, it's clarity, it's safety. And once you tasted that kind of peace, you could never again pretend that emotional turmoil was normal. Chosen One, this is where you stopped explaining your exits. You stopped announcing your boundaries. You stopped fighting for understanding from people committed to misunderstanding you. You learned that leaving quietly is sometimes the most powerful response. This doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you started caring correctly. You still feel deeply, you still empathize, but now you don't abandon yourself in the process. You don't stay where you're tolerated instead of respected. You don't give endless chances to people who repeatedly cross your limits. You choose yourself without needing permission. And here's the part many don't understand. This peace isn't passive, it's active. It's a conscious daily choice, a refusal to participate in emotional wars, a decision to preserve your essence instead of proving your worth. Chosen One, when peace becomes your power, your life simplifies. Your circle gets smaller, but stronger. Your conversations get quieter, but more meaningful. Your energy becomes consistent instead of scattered. And that consistency is magnetic. Some people will say you've changed, that you're distant, that you're no longer the same. But what they're really reacting to is the loss of access. They were comfortable when you overextended yourself. They were familiar with your availability. They benefited from your lack of boundaries. Now, your calm unsettles them. You don't respond to everything. You don't explain yourself to everyone. You don't engage in every conflict. And that restraint is not weakness, it's mastery. You've learned that not every emotion deserves a reaction. Not every invitation deserves an answer. Not every battle deserves your energy. And because of that, your nervous system is healing, your intuition is sharpening, and your spirit is grounding. Chosen One, peace didn't make you smaller. It made you anchored. It gave you a center no one can easily disturb. And from that center, you now move with intention instead of impulse. Stay with this channel. This phase is sacred. Your peace is no longer something you sacrifice. It's something you protect. And that protection is what allows your true power to rise. Conclusion. Chosen One, you didn't change. You remembered. Chosen One. If you have walked through every part of this message, it's because something inside you already knew the truth. This journey was never about becoming someone new. It was about returning to who you were before the world told you to be smaller, quieter, tougher, or less feeling. You didn't lose yourself by accident. You adapted to survive. And now, you are no longer surviving. You are remembering. They may say you've changed, that you're distant, that you're no longer the same. But what they don't understand is that the version of you they miss was the one that abandoned themselves to keep others comfortable. The one who overgave, overexplained, and overextended just to belong. That version was not your truth. It was your armor. And armor is meant to be removed once the battle is over. Chosen one, healing did not make you cold. It made you whole. It aligned your heart with your boundaries. It taught you that love without respect is not love, and compassion without self-care is self-destruction. You learned that you don't have to suffer to be spiritual, and you don't have to shrink to be accepted. You now understand the weight of your presence. You've felt how rooms shift when you enter, how conversations soften or become uneasy. Not because you try to change anything, but because truth disrupts what's built on illusion. Your healed energy doesn't argue, it doesn't chase, it doesn't convince, it simply is. And that is why some people drift away. Not everyone can walk beside someone who no longer lives in self-doubt. Not everyone is ready to meet themselves in the mirror your clarity reflects. This is not loss, it is alignment. Those who belong in your next chapter will recognize you without explanation. Chosen one, your sensitivity, once mocked, has become your discernment. Your empathy, once exploited, has become wisdom. Your silence, once misunderstood, has become authority. You no longer speak to be validated. You no longer give to be chosen. You no longer stay where your soul feels heavy. You choose peace. You choose truth. You choose yourself. And in doing so, you've become a presence, a steady light, a quiet guide for those who are also waking up. You don't force awakening. You embody it. You don't save others. You show what's possible. This path won't always be understood, but it will always be right for you. You were never meant to fit into the noise. You were meant to stand as clarity within it. And now, with your heart protected and your spirit aligned, you walk forward without fear. Chosen one, if this message resonated, it's because your soul recognized itself. Stay connected to this space. This channel exists for those who are healing without losing their depth, awakening without hardening their hearts, and choosing truth over survival. You didn't change. You remembered who you are, and nothing will ever take that away.